Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of this Python app development tutorial series where we are building a mobile application using Python along with Kivy and KivyMD. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so now and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of these videos. So basically, let's just start off with this basic project. So I've just created a test.py file in a folder and I've activated my Python environment, which we installed in the previous tutorial. So just before you start, just make sure that you run source activate or source scripts activate to activate your environment. That's in Windows. So you just use .scripts like so. And then if you are on Linux, you will use source bin activate, and likewise on Mac or Apple. So go ahead and do that and make sure that your environment is active. So what we'll do now is we'll go through some basics of Kivy just to get you up to speed with Kivy and how it works and how we can actually apply this to then go ahead and build a mobile app from that and then take it a little further in coming tutorials. So the first thing we'll do is we'll just basically create the most basic Kivy app that you can build, and it is just the traditional Hello World app, just to give you an idea of how things are structured and how you actually create these various widgets and things on your screens as well. So to start off, the first thing we need to just do is basically import the app class. So we'll just import the app class and then we'll import a label from the UIX package, and then we'll use that in our application. So the very first thing you want to do here now is just basically go ahead and create a class which is going to contain these widgets, and to do that you just go class kivy app, and this class name can be whatever you want. As long as you inject this app class into it so that we can use it, then you should be fine. Then you need a build method which basically compiles all the different widgets that you have inside of your class and then returns them as a container, which then becomes a single widget called kivy app, which is the class name that we have over here. So we can do something like this, self.title, and we could just say test app like that, and then basically we can create a label. So we'll create a new label and we can set the text equal to hello world like that, and then we can go ahead and just return this label like so. Then we just need a bit of boilerplate just to be able to execute this. So we'll just if the name is equal to main, we then simply just go ahead and instantiate the Kivy app like this and then run like so. So now what we can do is we could just run it like this, python test.py, and we should hopefully get a window, but I spelled something incorrectly here. That's that label, so just fix that off, save it, and then try again. So I've still messed something up. This should be an uppercase, and try again. And now we should just get this window with hello world in the middle. So that's the most basic Kivy application you can build just to get going. So how you understand this is that we basically inject the app, and then that can become an app that runs. And then we go ahead and add widgets, which we can then return, and it will then render when we run the app. So let's go for a more complex example now, where we just basically create a login screen, and then we'll go ahead and start looking at something called kivy language, which is sort of like a hierarchical markup, which allows us to build UIs in Kivy. So let's start off with a bit of a login screen. So I'm going to take this exact code we have here, but I'm just going to modify it and add a few things. So we'll just name this login screen for one, And then we want to just create a window size of some sort. So we'll set the window size to 400 by 200 dpi basically, or dots per inch, and then we'll go ahead and we'll start building out the layout of this thing. So we need a few things first before we can go ahead and do that. So we need some text input so that we have user fields and password fields, and then we also need a grid and box layout so that we can lay our things out correctly. So from kivy.uix, we want to basically bring in the grid layout. And I'm just going to copy this so that we can do this a little faster. So it's going to be a couple of these UIXs, so I'm going to go ahead, this is box layout, which we need, and then just change this to box layout over here. And then we need button, so I need a button, so that's for the login button, so I'll just call that button. And then we used window over here, which we need as well, which is part of Kivy core, and we'll just go window like that, and window over here. So we also need a text input, so I'm going to grab this again and paste it. So we use a text input over here, and then text input over here. Okay, so now we've got everything we need to import, and now we're going to create a basic layout. So we want to have 2 rows and a column, and then we want a button which basically spans the width of the screen more or less. So to do that, we first of all need to go ahead and just create something called a layout, and we'll use a grid layout. So a grid layout is a lot like a table structure. So we'll define cols is 2 columns, so we want 2 rows, and we want to just add some padding as well and some spacing. So padding, we'll make it 10, spacing, we'll make it 10, and then we want a row height. So that's just to help us place our objects correctly. So default height, and we'll just make that 30 for now and then see how that goes. Then the next thing we want to do is we want to actually create our username input and all those things, so those widgets. So what I'm going to do is create some labels, and then we're going to start adding them to our layout. So first thing we'll do is we'll create a username input. So let's just make this email input, and we'll just go text input like that. Then we want to have a password input, so I'll do password input, and you again use text input, but you just go ahead and you pass in this password and you set it to true, and that will allow it to mask out the password. So then the next thing we want to do is just create some labels. So I'm going to create a user label, and we'll make it a label with text called username. I'm going to keep it simple for now. We're not going to be doing too much styling right now. Just get the basic layout, password label, and again we'll just make the text password. So text is equal to password. Right, so now we can actually start adding this to our grid layout, because we've now got 2 columns, 2 rows. So now we can add them in order of left to right, and then the next row starts from the 3rd thing we add. So basically we'll go layout, add widget, and we'll add the user label, because that's the first thing we want to display. So that's the top left. And what I'm actually going to do before we do that is do the rest. Let me run this so that you can envision what it looks like. So the first thing we need to do here to be able to run this is to return our layout. So it becomes a widget, and then we can run this, and you'll see there's a username here now. But now we're going to go ahead and add basically our input field. So we'll add our email input over here, and then you'll see with each stage what happens. So it's username and the field to the right. So now again we'll do the same. We'll add the next label. So I'll just copy this and paste it, and then we'll use the password label over here, this. Then we want to go ahead and just add the next thing, which is the password field. So we'll go ahead and just get this password input over here and paste it. And then let's run this to see what it looks like. So I've got a username with a field and a password, and this is really ugly. But if you resize this window, it will look a little bit more like a login form. And if we type here, it's unmasked, and if we type here, it's masked. So we basically have a basic login form at this point, which can open in Windows, and it's not yet mobile friendly, but if you wanted to compile this look and feel for mobile, you could do that as well. That's the beautiful thing about Kivy, is that it is canvas rendered, so it gets rendered basically with OpenGL and other different types of technologies as a canvas item, so it's drawn, it's not actually UI components. So everything that you create in Kivy will just be portable directly to a mobile device or a Windows, Mac or Linux device. So basically what we'll do next is we'll just create another part of the layout for our login button, and we'll call this main layout. And we'll create a box layout. So a box layout basically just orientates things in a direction, and you can just add to them and they will sort of fit basically the screen size and resize according to that. We'll create this box layout and we'll create an orientation of vertical, so we're going to display it in the vertical direction, and we'll just add some padding again and some spacing. 10. Alright, I want to just create our login button, so we'll just declare a variable here, login button with button, and text is equal to login, and then we'll just simply add this to our main layout dot add and add widget, and it'll be login button. So this is where the magic happens. We can now go ahead and basically add our layout to our main layout as well. So we want to do it before we do the button, so that it actually becomes the first item in the box layout, and then the second item becomes the login button. So let's do one at a time so that I can show you what that looks like. So I'm going to do main layout dot add widget, and we'll add our layout. I'm going to for now then comment out these two over here so that we have it without the login button. So we need to actually go ahead and return the main layout now, because that's what we're displaying, and run that. Now you'll see we basically still have the same thing, but it's now within a box layout as well, the grid. And when we add our buttons to that, you will now see that it's going to be after the fact, and there's the login button now. So if you resize this down, it looks a little more like a login screen, and bring it across like that. So you'll just size your window and your elements according to what you need. So that's great. That's a login screen quite quickly and easily in Kivy. And now let's quickly look at how we can redo this using kivy language, and how much simpler it is to do it in that fashion. So to do that, I'm going to get rid of all of this code here. I think I might just keep window size and so on, but let's have a look at what we come up with. And then we'll go ahead and we'll load this up and then run it in our application. So one of the things we need to first do, we need to use something called a builder. So we need to bring in kivy.lang, and we're importing the builder. So this will take this kv language, which is a hierarchical language for building UIs, and then interpret it and sort of bring it into Kivy and do some bindings, etc., so that it fits with Kivy, and then you can actually then interact with it. So let's just start off with a very basic form of this kv language. So what we need to do is we need to run the build method here, so that we can actually bring our Kivy or kv language in. So to do that, we'll just go ahead and we'll call builder and then load string. So you could load files even, but we are going to keep it simple and load string. If you load files, you can create separate files with this hierarchy in it, load it up, and then use it within your apps. That's for bigger projects, and that's fine. You can organize it that way, but because we're trying to keep this as simple as possible, we'll just keep everything in the same Python file. So let's go ahead now and try and build out this login screen using kivy language. So I'm just going to go ahead now and start off with or maybe we won't follow the entire same structure as this, but let's see what we come up with. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm not going to have any root elements or any widgets. We'll have that later on. So we'll just create a box layout to start with. So you'll see the ordering is very different. So you need to kind of understand how things are ordered. So at the top level, everything will be contained within a box layout. So you'll see here, everything is the box layout at the end. So we need to start with this box layout. So we'll go ahead and create an orientation again, same as before, but just in this kivy language. The vertical padding will make 10 again, spacing will make 10 again. We'll create a grid layout, and then rows will set to 2, and then cols to 2, and we'll do that same row default height again, default height, and we'll make that 30, and then we'll create our labels. So we'll create a label text, and this will be email, and we'll then create a text input which has no properties at this point. We'll have a label called password, so text password, and then a text input for the password, and don't forget this colon here, and then go ahead and just set password to true. So you can see this is quite similar to what we did before, but a little bit more intuitive and easier to understand. Then, because we want the button to be part of the box layout, we come back a little bit, and then we create the button and set the text to login. So that basically is our kivy language for this below. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these elements over here, and let's not return anything yet, and get rid of this layout, and let's see if we can make this run. So run it, and you see that there's nothing. So that is one of the problems. So what we need to do now is go ahead and do some form of binding. So this is kivy app, and what we want to do is go ahead and just modify this a little bit so that it actually gets imported into our app correctly. So to do that, we need to basically go ahead and just create a root element which we can use. So we'll go ahead and just turn this into a root element like so, and just go ahead and do that, and let's see if this works. There's a lot of experimenting that's going on, so you see that didn't really work. It's for some reason, let's see the reason pass error identified missing. So okay, so let's call this login or kivy app like this, and let's see orientation, is it spelled correctly, vertical, and let's go ahead and try again. Now it's not having any errors, which is good, and what we maybe want to do now is just make sure that let's get rid of this and just make it a pass, and still nothing. So the thing is here is that you need to go ahead and add this as a widget. So we're going to just change this a little bit. We're going to change this to a screen, and we're going to call this kivy screen like that, and then we'll call this kivy screen as well, and then we need to actually import screen over here. So for that we'll use a different type of library, so we need to just bring that in, and it's also part of the UIX library, so kivy.uix.screen-manager, and we're going to import screen. And then what we'll do is we'll give that a screen, and then we'll create a class app, or a app basically for a class. So we'll just call this main app, and then we'll inject app into here, and then from there we'll go ahead and just basically set our window sizes and everything, and we can return our screen manager. So again, what we need to do now is bring in the screen manager over here, and then we can go ahead and create our screen manager by using def build, like so. And I'm going to get rid of this. So we want to basically create a screen manager, so sm equals screen manager, like this. And then we want to add our widget. So we're going to sm, so basically we'll register our widget by just doing this. Add widget, and it's going to be our kivy screen. And we're going to give it a name so that we can actually reference it later on. Let's call it kivy screen for now. And then basically we'll return sm, which is our screen manager, to be rendered. And then down here we'll change this to main app.run, and let's give this a go. So you'll see now we have a login screen which has a screen manager, and it's using kivy language. So basically guys, that's the introduction to Kivy and how we can just build basic login forms like this. In the next tutorial, we'll go ahead and convert this to a Kivy MD, and it's going to start looking like a mobile app. And maybe if we have time, we'll also look at how we can do a request to a web server to actually do a real login. So thanks again for watching. If you like this, please like below, and if you have questions, please leave some comments. And thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.